The deal falls far short of what tenant advocates and small landlords were hoping for, but it does bring some relief to tenants who were unable to pay their rent since the pandemic hit in March. The deal turns missing rent from between March and August 31st into civil debt, meaning they can't be the basis for an eviction. But it also requires that tenants pay at least 25% of their rent between now and February, even if they still have no income and their unemployment insurance can't cover that amount. Grace Martinez, a tenant advocate with the group ACE, says this will lead to an overwhelming amount of eviction cases working their way through housing courts, while the pandemic has not in the least subsided among low-income communities.
With this pandemic raging and where people are at risk of just being exposed, and this is not going to help stop the spread. And I think there's, a lot of concerns for just people's health and also, where are they going to live at this point?
A recent study found that over 40% of California's renters are currently unable to pay their full rent and are at risk of eviction. Instead of a blanket moratorium on evictions, which would avoid worsening California's homelessness crisis, Martinez says that the burden will now fall on tenants to provide paperwork and proof of how the pandemic has impacted them financially. For the most part, tenants will represent themselves in court.
Are there enough lawyers in order that on the tenant side that will actually be able to go to bat for them? And the answer is no.
The city of San Diego has an eviction moratorium in place until September 30th. But the state's housing courts will reopen tomorrow for the first time in months, meaning that eviction cases that precede the moratorium and evictions where tenants are unable to prove sufficiently in court that they've been impacted by the pandemic will be allowed to move ahead. Advocates fear that California's homelessness crisis, already dire before the pandemic, will somehow worsen even further. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.